Okay, this is our second video of Chapter 10. All right, improving hiring practices. So, in order to ensure that we do the best job that we can to make sure that departments only hire those cops with the highest morals and ethics so that hopefully they don't engage in racial profiling or excessive use of force or discretion that is incorrect or taking gratuities, all those things. Most departments have hiring and promotional practices, like we talked about in week 6, and they make sure that they do thorough background checks and have investigators and psychological evaluations to hopefully that these things don't happen. And a lot of times, if you do look into, and I'm not saying all, believe me, but it is a low percentage of cops that are rotten apples. But if you look into those, a lot of times they haven't gone through the strict processes that you see out west that a lot of departments do have. All right, private sector practices do differ in the following ways. They place less emphasis on outdated physical agility tests. They don't do a lot of in-depth oral reviews. They don't have a lot of high educational requirements. And so a lot of times, a lot of the departments that call themselves cops that are really security officers um, are responsible for a lot of these things that happen. So again, make sure that you're looking at the department where the so-called cop is coming from that engaged in these practices. All right, also in improved hiring practices, quotas and performance standards or performance evaluations are not based on tickets and arrests. A lot of departments used to do this a long time ago. They're not doing this anymore. Also, zero tolerance arrest policies. They're notorious for increasing the probability of bias-based enforcement practices. So if they are done, which sometimes they are in a lot of departments because they have to be, it is imperative that the supervisors oversee those zero tolerance arrest policies to make sure that there aren't any ethical violations occurring. All right, intolerance of malfeasance. Rather than focus on zero tolerance arrest policies, a lot of departments will say that the problems come with other colleagues, that officers don't want to tell on the other one or they don't want to rat out. But I have to tell you that a long time ago that would happen, and albeit in these days, less and less that's starting to happen, stopping happening. It's not happening anymore. That more officers are saying, you know what, we need to be ethical. We have to support and we work for our community, and therefore, whether you're my friend or not, you shouldn't do this. Um, a National Institute of Justice study in 2005 was designed to promote integrity in the police profession and focused on the following issues. Did agencies know the rules? Did they support those rules? Were members willing to report misconduct? The report basically offered recommendations for encouraging officers to come forward to report acts of misconduct by their coworkers. They wanted to make it clear that officers and supervisors who do not report misconduct will be disciplined. And this actually happened in my department. We had an officer that responded to a call with another officer. So let's say Officer A and Officer B. Officer A was actually let's call it the quote unquote bad, unethical officer that actually used force when he shouldn't have. Officer B was there, didn't use the force, but knew it had occurred and didn't say anything. And both officers were fired and lost their jobs. All right, in-car video cameras and also body cameras allow officers to not only be videotaped, but not only the audio, but video recordings. And this is going to help really, in the long run, make sure that officers are ethical and accountable for what they do. Many police departments have adopted policies of these cameras, and a lot of these cameras can only be turned off by supervisors, and if they are turned off by the officer, that could be a reason to be terminated or to have days off and be disciplined. The videotape's always rolling, and so officers will tell you it makes them a better officer. I mean, think about you. If you're on your job, do you have a job right now? Imagine if there's a video camera on you. It makes you do a better job as well. It makes you treat people better. So I think there's a lot of advantages to having videos everywhere in police work. And I think there's a lot of advantages to having video cameras pretty much everywhere and everybody's job. I think it would really change the way our society acts right now. All right, media relations. For a variety of reasons, police and the media have not always had the best relationship, and many police officials tend to shun media representatives because they know, or I don't want to say no, but in the past, media, whenever they can show cops looking bad, they will do that. So a lot of times cops will shun them. And what I have found, that's the worst thing you can do. The best thing is to have as much of an open relationship as you can, nothing hidden, and you'll find that the media can actually work for you. All right, ethics in policing. Ethics is best described as the study of right and wrong, duty and responsibility, and personal character. So, ethics is doing the right thing in the right way at the right time for the right reasons. And according to COPS in 2008, the need for ethical decision making by police goes a step further with the addition of intelligence led policing. More than 30 years ago, the Knapp Commission discovered that a majority of New York City police officers did not aggressively seek out opportunities to engage in unethical conduct. In fact, the Knapp Commission was commissioned because they thought all of the New York City Police Department was unethical and morally corrupt. And they found that just wasn't true. Did have a few rotten apples, but most weren't. The commission referred to officers as grass eaters, and those were the officers that didn't want to get involved in bad conduct, but also refused to turn in other officers. And the reluctance to report wrongdoing is referred to as nonfeasance. So when the grass eaters are obeying the law but won't report another officer who isn't, that's called nonfeasance, and they can be reprimanded as well. All right, law enforcement has a code of conduct towards everything. They have a main code of conduct, and I'm just going to cover a few of them. One is use of force, that basically states a police officer will never employ unnecessary force or violence and will only use that such force in the discharge of duty that is reasonable in all circumstances. So it basically says that the suspect dictates the use of force. If the suspect is refusing to put his or her hand behind their back, then the officer can use force. But if the suspect is obeying all commands, the officer can't use force. That's what it basically means. Also, under the law enforcement code of conduct is integrity, and it basically says a police officer will not engage in acts of corruption or bribery, nor will an officer condone such acts. So an officer has to have integrity. Also, confidentiality. You can only imagine the type of calls you go on as a cop. You go to calls where you go into homes of people and see them as nobody else sees them, the worst of the worst. And that's not something you can go and share on any social media and with all your friends and the news and all that kind of stuff. That is something that you have to learn to keep to yourself because it's confidential. And everybody suspects that you are seeing them at their worst and you will keep it confidential. There's also personal and professional capabilities that officers will be responsible for their own standard of professional performance and will take every opportunity to learn and gain their education and knowledge. And in our private life, I can tell you this, being a cop and being in criminal justice, it's one of the few careers out there that if you do things in your own life, you can get fired in your own job. For example, let's say you worked at a local company answering the phone and filing and doing things like that, and on your days off you got a DUI. Probably you could call in sick and they might not ever know. If you're a cop, you're probably going to lose your job. So your private life, you have to live at the same high exemplary conduct as you do when you're on the job. All right, it is a slippery slope being a cop because anything, if you think about it in your life that you do, anything can be called upon to be looked unethical or moral. So when you're a cop, you have to be ready to live at the top of the top, to be the most ethical you can ever be, and choose that those around you and those friends that you choose do the same. The vast majority of cops perform their duties honestly, ethically, and professionally, but there are a few of them that do a tremendous amount of damage to the reputation of policing. There are some videos, Rodney King, just what happened with how the officers beat him, the excessive use of force, and the riots, and how bad. And again, it's a select few that can do so much damage. Or you look at the Freddie Gray case in Baltimore, just so sad, and it's awful. And ethics are just so important in policing, and it is the whole essence of professionalism. Professional police officers are the ones that have excellent personal character. They understand justice, temperance, and truthfulness. They respect all laws, policies. They remain accountable for the organization, the communities, and themselves. They have a commitment to higher education and they're continually learning, and they remain intolerant of the misconduct within their ranks. They encourage ethical conduct, and it is imperative, according to Scaramella in 2001, that the ethical attitudes of those in criminal justice classes understand that it begins here and now, that ethics in policing starts in the early years and continues on. The most alarming result of studies that occurred was that 20% of students responding reported a willingness to perjure themselves to keep other coworkers out of trouble. And unfortunately, when you're in law enforcement, you can't do that. All right, we're going to stop here and we'll continue on to video 3.